Welcome to Real Talk with Miss Brenda. I'm Miss Brenda, and today I have John McNeil with me. He's the chairman of the board at the Lovelady Center, which is what this is all about, what miracles God has done for us. And John's been with us. John, how long have you been with us now?
Well, I've been with you at the center for almost 13 years now, or maybe over 13 years. Yep.
Wouldn't that be fun being with me every day for 13 years?
Well, I must say, feel like I'm taking my life in my hands, sitting in front of a microphone with you.
Yeah, well,
because you must know, I do not know what you're going to say next or what you're going to do next.
Everybody always wants to know, what are you going to say, Brenda? And I say, I don't know. I just say whatever happens, you know. But the first thing I want to know is, I want to know, how did you get to us? And remember, this is real talk.
It's real okay. Talk. No, just in other words, it's okay to say whatever.
Yeah, it's okay to say the truth.
Well, no, it's actually a great story, and it's a part of what I love about being associated with the center for the time that I have, because you can, kind of like they say, life is lived forward but understood backwards. And it's always great to look back and see what God has done. And it really was God connections that brought me to the center. When you started the Lovelady Center, I was actually down in Destin, Florida, still doing real estate development work. And so I really didn't know anything about it when my wife and I moved back to Birmingham. And so I was actually working with a young man by the name of Don Ankenbrandt, board member at the Lovelady Center. And he was the one that introduced me to the center. Actually said to me one day, do you think that you might be interested in going down and seeing what's doing, and then if it makes sense, getting involved? And so, as my wife would say, I did a very unusual thing. I'm not very impulsive, but I just got in the car one day and drove to the center, walked in the door, spoke to the lady at the front desk and said, you guys give tours? And she said, of course we do. And I had a wonderful tour of the center, and went home that night. And I remember telling my wife, I said, you know, I have no idea whether or not I can bring any value to the center. Just don't know it all. But I do know I just spent an hour in a building where God's working. And that reminded me of the Blackerby study, The Mind of Christ, where they talked about wanting to do things for kingdom purposes. And what they said was the smart thing to do is to look around and see where God's already working, because he's pretty much got this figured out, right? So look where he's working and then join in there. And then, the rest became history until you and I talk about how you and I got together and how you opened the door for me to be able to be a part of it.
It was, gosh, I don't want to sit on this program today and cry, because I never do. But what captivated you about the center, John?
Well, primarily that kind of what I said, just you can feel God's presence when you walk in the door. But more than that, I think it was, whenever you go to a place, when you hear somebody telling you, you want to go and see a recovery center, place working with people recovering from alcoholism or from drug addiction or reentry from prison reentry, you have a perception. If you've never been involved with that work, you have a perception of what that's going to look like and feel like. And of course, what I walked into was something entirely different. You sensed his love in the place. You sensed the love that each of the women had to each other. And it was, like I said, simply that is what drew me to it, because from a personal standpoint, that was not really something that had been part of my life or even close to my family member's life.
The same goes with me. What happened, just to let you guys know, what happened is when I started the center, and I did not have any idea what I was doing. If you haven't read it, you need to read Miss Brenda and the Loveladies. That was my first book. It's the history of how the center started. Well, being new in this field and not really knowing what I was doing, and now we've gone from the house to this great big building, and we were in probably about the 7th year when John came. But a lot of people did not understand me. That's putting it mildly. And when people don't understand you, they really, sometimes they get what did you used to tell me? Perception is.
Perception is reality.
Perception is reality to them. That's what John told me. And people perceived me as being quite different than I am. You know, and John, very well known in Birmingham, and I tell him he bleeds blue and I bleed red. But what happened is somehow or other, John's presence brought a new perception, a new reality to people. Because did people ask you in the beginning, what was I like and all that kind of stuff?
Well, you must know that question probably came several times. But I think, oftentimes we feel like what people are perceiving is worse than what they're actually perceiving. I think that what engaged me so much with you, and I'll remember this, I'll tell you this, the most impactful statement that I think you ever made to me was when we were talking one time very early on. And I asked you, how do you go about just doing what you do? Because you were actually swimming upstream. You weren't accepting the natural. You weren't accepting what people would have said, well, it should be this way or it should be that way. You basically said, well, to tell you the truth, I get up every day and what I try to do is not disappoint God. And I said, well, there's the answer, right? You weren't trying to make other people happy or what people perceive the way things ought to go. In your mind, it was, God, what do you want me to do today? And you tried your best to do that.
That is really that is really how I operate. I really try. People always talk about they're going to have stars in their crown and this and that. Listen, I just want to squeak in.
Don't we all?
I'm just so worried about, displeasing him. That is my biggest fear in life is he doesn't even have to say, well done. He can say, you made it. And I would be happy. I strive to be the person that he wants me to be. And so do you. And let's talk a little bit about our journey. Been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It's been a wonderful journey, and it has been quite a journey. And I think to me, the amazing thing is, as I say, when you can look back and see what God's plan was all along, because in the natural, it never should have happened like it did. The number of women that came seeking help, needing help, and there was never a thought in your mind that you were going to turn anybody away. It wasn't a question of like, well, okay, we can only do 100 or we can only do 120. It was if they show up at my door and they're seeking help, then we're going to find a way to give them help. And oftentimes, we were chasing resources well after the people had arrived. So
yeah.
But God is
chasing resources is a good way to put it. I'm telling you. But
God is faithful, right? And He's always going to do what He's going to do as long as we're faithful to what He wants us to do. I really feel like, and I feel like the story, obviously, what we're telling is not our story. We're telling God's story, right? And the reality is, I feel like that the team you have gathered around you there at the center, the staff and the people that are there, that are showing up and giving it their all every day, are simply trying to do their best to love like Jesus loves.
I'm telling you, we have the most unbelievable team. I can remember one time DOC, the Department of Corrections, was visiting, and they were looking around and they said, well, Brenda, it's just you and the inmates running the place. I said, yeah, but these are not inmates any longer. These are changed women. For the most part, you're one of the few people we have, along with me. I hadn't, thank God. But you're one of the few people that we hired, that you were already the square peg that fit in the square hole, whereas most everybody else I had to chisel to get them in there. And we are a strange pair. If, there is no way that in the real world, it would seem like that we might not be as compatible. But when John came, it gave me someone that I could bounce ideas off, and he would keep me kind of like in the middle of the road, sort of. It is almost impossible to keep me in the middle of the road. But I would listen to him. I've always valued his opinion more than you can possibly imagine. His wife, Beverly, and John have meant as much to me personally as they have to the center. I always say Melinda's John's favorite, and I'll get mad at him if he says it today. I've got him on the spot here. Surely he won't say that today, but...
Don't ask then.
He loves Melinda. That's my daughter. And he never gets on to her. If Melinda and I are having a disagreement, which we do, he always takes her side. And then when she walks out of the room, I can tell he's on my side. And I say, well, why didn't you say that? I want to know, why do you always take her side?
Now, you're putting me in a real box here. I don't always take her side. But, oftentimes it's... I think so. All right, let's go back to a little bit. Here's my favorite thing about what you said about us being opposites, and I tell people that. And I don't know if you've probably heard me say this, but I tell most people if I have to describe the two of us, I am, and Beverly would agree with this. I'm kind of past conservative. I'm like, I got to study it. I got to gather all the facts. So I'm that ready, aim one more time, and then fire. Working with you is the first time I've ever really worked with anybody who goes, ready, fire. Oh, was I supposed to aim? But the beauty of it is that precise makeup as to who you are as to why the center survived those early years. Because in the natural, again, as I refer to that oftentimes because it is God, and you give him all the credit, and it is God who
is totally
got it,
God.
Who got
There is
it
no
there.
way I would have done this without God.
But you had to be trusting in him when you went into and around and over the walls that came up in those early years, and plenty of them did because it wasn't easy. You were fighting zoning problems. You were fighting all sorts of things that should have and could have stopped many people, but never did. But the beauty, I also say, is Melinda, God had Melinda by your side from the beginning because y'all are the perfect example of the entrepreneur that takes everything they are to bring something into existence. But you also need that other person in there that works on, stabilizing and controlling and putting processes and procedures into place. And that's what Melinda loves to do.
Yeah, listen, I can say in the morning, oh, I know what. We need to do da-da-da-da-da, whatever it was. And she'd have a system in place before I could even start explaining it. She is all about systems. And, of course, for somebody like me, that's hard. Sometimes I think, well, I don't need a system. I just need it done.
Yeah, there you go. I just need people to get my things done.
Yeah. By the way, I'm just going to tell them what to do, and then they call Melinda. Melinda, your mother. I'm so tired of that. But when you came, I'm not going to say you calmed me down, but you definitely made me think more.
Well, and again, I think things were beginning to move into a place where you had a chance to take a little more of a breath. In the beginning, everything was moving so rapidly, and it was almost a new day every day. You didn't really have time to really take a breath and think about things. So fortunately, my timing was such that my personality coming in might have worked well. And I want to jump back to a minute, too, about what you said about the staff and how you, in the beginning, it was basically molding people who didn't necessarily fit the mold of what you needed done into people perfectly capable of doing it. But I truly think it's the people who have experienced the addiction journey, the incarceration journey, the abuse journey, or whatever it is, that can truly communicate with other people that have walked that walk. It would really be impossible for me to sit across from one of the women in the program and act like I could understand their situation in any way, shape, or form. That would be like a cosmic joke for me with the life I've been fortunate enough to live. But it's those people who have walked that same journey that can look them in the eye and say, you know what, I understand your story, but if God can do it for me, he can do it for you.
You know, I think one of the best things that God ever did for me was my starting it in my home, where I thought that's where it was going to be forever. And I then not having anyone, you know, the house mother, everybody quit, and it was just me. I was living and breathing with those first women, and I was the one going through the house at night trying to figure out why they slept with the lights on. I would get to one end of the house and every light would be off. By the time I got to my room, all the lights would be on again. And I'm like, what is the problem here? Just walking in their shoes, feeling their pain, knowing their insecurities. Oh my goodness, gave me such a heart for them. And it also opened my eyes. You didn't have that value, but you felt the heart. Many times you would sit in there and you would listen, and your tears would well up. It is almost impossible not to spend a day at the center.
Yeah.
I mean, we see more miracles in a week than most people see in a lifetime.
Amen to that. Yep.
Do we not?
We do indeed. And I'm also thoroughly convinced that there was a absolute God reason that Shay was the first person that stepped off that van coming from Tutwiler. First one to show up at your door, because based on the life she'd lived, she truly had reached the point where she was absolutely certain there was nobody that would help a person like her unless they had an alternative, some reason. They wanted something to get something from her before they would help her. So she needed to learn that there were people that did it just because God called them to do it. And then you needed to learn what Shay knew about life on the streets and life in prison and how they see things and how they do things. She taught you all about that world.
What do you think about Shay?
Oh, golly. She was one of the most amazing women I think I've ever met. Because it's impossible, which is in your great book. I encourage you again, if you haven't read it, to read it. But it's impossible to read Shay's story and to have spent time with Shay at the time that the rest of the story, right, of Shay after God reached in there and did what God did. You couldn't put the two people together. And Shay would often look at me when we would talk about her past and say, you know, I can talk about that person, but when I do, I feel like I'm talking about another person. I don't feel like I'm talking about myself, and in fact, she was. But she was as full of joy and as fun to be around as anybody, but she also she would hold the girls accountable.
Oh, she held them accountable, all right.
She'd hold you accountable.
I can't tell you how many times she'd quit and come right back. She wouldn't even make it home, and she'd be back. Just for the record, you know, spoiler alert, in the second book, Shay passes away. She had a long, lengthy battle with cirrhosis. And there's a lot of consequences that I call them my women, and that's, I dare anybody to call them anything else, you know. They are, Shay struggled, the things that woman endured when she was a child. I am a survivor, but I am nothing like she is and like some of the women. People say, well, what do you think about them? I am here to tell you, I have more respect for most of the women than I do for a lot of people. I love them. I respect them. This week we had the swimming party at the house. Every year in August, we always have swimming parties for the women to come when it's so hot, and we have cookouts and all. And this was the weekend. I guess I had about 150 at my house Saturday and Sunday, and Melinda had about 150, and then tomorrow I'll have the rest of them. But they have experienced things. It's one thing to read it in a book. And now then, in the second book, I started telling stories, and I think that everybody will really enjoy those. But Shay does die in the second book, and we don't have her with us anymore. I was with her when she died, and I miss her.
We miss her a lot. Yep.
I miss her a lot. But we see a lot more death, don't we, John?
Well, a lot more than we'd like to see. Of course, it's, for anybody who's anywhere close to that world, everybody knows addiction's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And sadly, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. The problem in the country is getting worse, along with mental illness. So it's, oftentimes when people ask me, how are things going at the center? My standard answer is, well, the good news is it's going well. The bad news is it's going well.
Yeah. Because, it would be wonderful if there was no need for us.
100%. I'd love to think we were working ourselves out of a job.
But we're not.
We're not.
Tell me, what do you see? Tell me where you see we are now.
What I see now is basically God moving in a powerful way, from the standpoint of just addressing the problem. More and more people understanding the problem, understanding the need. I often say that I feel like as long as we stay true to what has always been, the foundation of the Lovelady Center, which is, Christ first, and then basically teaching Christ love to people who oftentimes have never felt love. That as long as we do that and hold true and say that the first thing will always be the first thing, and that is if you don't have a relationship with Christ, you need a relationship with Christ. He's the only one that can change your heart and change your story to where you can understand it. Now, on top of that, we've developed, I think, one of the best programs in the country in terms of giving.
It better be.
Yeah, giving life skills and encouragement and, teaching them how to move forward from the, out
will
of
not settle
the
for
life
second best.
Right, exactly. And so I think as long as we stay true to that, then God's going to honor that, and He is. But the women just keep coming, but we are receiving unbelievable community support now. And we're very fortunate with that because it's a lot. I mean, when we include our aftercare women, the children, the ones that are in our aftercare housing, I mean, we're working with close to 700 women and children every day of the year. And that takes a lot.
Gosh, and I'm so tired of them asking me, Miss Brenda, do you know my name? I mean, all day long, do you know my name? And that means so much to them.
Yep.
And I cannot remember everybody's name anymore. Am I getting older, or is there just so many?
Well, no, I'm sure you remember a whole lot more of the names than I do. So I don't, it's just that the numbers are pretty staggering. I mean, we have in our intake department, as you know, we've got that wait list board, and they're running out of room for, putting names on there. And it truly is heartbreaking because in the recovery world, when someone seeks help, they need that help right then and there. And our inability to get to them sometimes means that we lose them. They get back out there, they get drugged back into the old life, and we never hear from them again.
Now we have never enough resources. We still need donors anywhere all the time, but we're nowhere near where we used to be. I used to, pray every payroll in, pray every rent, pray everything that possibly could. I can't tell you how many nights I have laid on the chapel floor praying, Lord, please don't let the lights get turned off, please. We are, I would still be doing that if we were not in a better place. I would have never let my daughter face what I faced in the very beginning. She was there, but people really didn't have any idea of the suffering and pain. Truly, the Lovelady Center has been a birthing process for me.
I'm sure.
It's been rough, but I am so thankful, and I'm so thankful for you, and I'm so thankful for Beverly. Now we have a gala once a year, and it raises money. We have 2 thrift stores, which they're my babies now. I really haven't let go of the thrift stores because they have to be pampered all the time. And if you've never gone to one of our thrift stores, I would urge you to. We've got the best bargains, and our thrift stores are just remarkable. We have a grant writer. We are civilized now. Are we not?
Well, maybe grown up. Maybe that's a good word for it. We've grown up a little bit, but no, 100%. I remember those days. You were still having to do a lot of that, even when I
Well,
joined
John,
in
you
there.
were with me.
Yep, we did it. We did it a lot of times, but
And we did the best we could with what we had to work with then. You were the one person that I trusted to know just where we were at any one given minute. And we would go in my office, shut the door, and we'd work and work. And I think that's what it is. He was like a partner to me in the impossible things. And I don't think you ever told me, except for my pottery, you never told me I couldn't do something. You said, we'll figure it out. And you helped me more than you know. I cannot begin to tell you. You walked through me even getting a movie deal. Are you excited about the movie?
Very excited about the movie. I'm kind of ready for Hollywood to move on and get the job done. but
Boy, they are slow, aren't they?
I understand things can move at a snail's pace out there. But yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of excitement on their end because they just know it's such a good story, and it's a wonderful faith-based story. It's the kind of movie most people are going to want to go see and take their family to, right? As opposed to some things today, but I'm not going to get on the wrong soapbox here. But no, it's been I think you give me, oftentimes too much credit, but I appreciate that. But it's been a joy.
You may not even know it, and it may not have meant it to you, but maybe just for me to be able to have somebody that I could call and talk to, and they weren't gonna just hang up on me and tell me this can't happen. You have believed for the impossible and helped make it possible with me, because whereas most people would say it can't happen, you've never said that.
Well, and that's because I think you convinced me early on that to the best of your ability, you were listening to God and depending on Him. So I kind of was happy to join in that in that belief, and move forward with this really isn't dependent upon us. It's depending on us moving forward and God doing what God's going to do.
This center, the ministry, was built on faith.
Yep.
Jesus is the cornerstone, and the walls are just built of faith. There is so much faith that it is taken for this center to make it and to survive. faith is, you have to bring your faith, you have to allow God to bring your faith up to a level that you never expected.
That and as kind of mentioned before, the love, God's love, the love of Christ, the way Christ dealt with people existing in the building. I'll tell you a funny story with
Tell me
Beverly. Beverly from the beginning. In the early days was when she first came down there, and we'd be down there. And for people who don't know or haven't visited the center, literally every conversation between clients and client representatives, staff members, whatever the case, every conversation ends with "I love you." It might even be a conversation that's been a tough conversation, a little bit, sometimes some tough words. But then it always ends with "I love you," because that's basically what people sensed when they were around Christ, and we understand that's an important thing. These women have to feel love first. So Beverly, when she came down there early on, she would be around, and then there'd be people doing what they do at the center. Conversations, it would end, and everybody would say "I love you." So we were home that night, and Beverly goes, "I need to tell you something." She said, "You're one of the few men that's down there, so you need to be careful on the "I love you" thing." And then after she came there 2 or 3 more times, she was like, "Never mind, I got it." And it was, and I think that is one of the real cornerstones of what I call the magic of the Lovelady Center. Is it's not just a saying to be a saying. When it's said, it's meant. And
No.
people
When
know
I tell
that.
one of these women, even when I don't know them, that I love them, I'm telling you, John, I love them from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah.
Now, is it the same kind of love like I have for you? It's different, but there's a lot of different words used for love in the scripture,
Yep.
and that's what. Tell me one of your favorite stories about one of your women.
Oh, shoot. Well, now you've kind of hit me with a tough one there, because I didn't even think about that. Trying to think of who I would even think. Well, I'll tell you the one that, because early on, one that's obviously very close to you, because she's your daughter-in-law now, but with Melissa, who's now Melissa Gregory.
Melissa was on the program.
She was because she was, I think, a fairly new graduate when I first, came into there. First time I met her, I think she was on the front desk. But it was getting to know at that time her young son Lewis, who was very young at that time, and and kind of the backstory of how she got there, and the loss of Lewis's dad. And I think it was the door that was open for me to spend some early times with Lewis. He was struggling with some school stuff, particularly in math, and fortunately I've got a son-in-law who has a doctorate in math, and so I was able to kind of hook them together for some tutoring and that sort of stuff. But it was basically kind of being immersed into the life of one of these women that was nothing like that I had ever seen or sensed before. And that's where I kind of learned, this is no different. There's nothing different here than had plenty of children that were struggling in their own right with math and everything else. And just God's grace that circumstances didn't, have my life evolve that way as opposed to the way it did. And it helped me see things much more clear and understand, what compassion's really all about.
It's this morning. There's a young lady that has just been such a blessing to me, getting everything ready for the pool parties and all. And we've been cleaning outside. You know how you have to do all this kind of stuff when you've got company. Because I want these girls to have the very best. I want them to see that there is no stopping God. Nothing is too big. Nothing is impossible. It may not happen like we want when we want it, but it's not impossible. And so here it is, heat index 107. I mean, just miserable hot. Every single day, John, She has got a bandana on. She has got a shirt, a heavy T-shirt, blue jeans, and boots on every day. And we're all running around, you know, shorts, flip-flops, just trying to breathe. And she's got on all this clothes. Well, part of coming to the house is you're going to get talked to, and I'm going to.
Right.
I'm going to counsel. Listen, you come to my house, you just might as well get it. I'm going to know everything, you know, without even being, I think women tell me so much because they know I care.
Yeah.
So I started talking to her, and I said, goodness gracious, why? What is going on? She said, well, I just do this as I've always done it. I said, okay, well, we'll talk about it later, you know. And so this morning, I was sitting there getting ready, and so she came in, and we were talking. I said, why don't you tell me what happened? It's the reason that you wear all this stuff. And she just burst into tears and started telling me about a brutal rape she endured.
Yeah.
And what happened to her. And I said, can we take that bandana off and let me see your hair? Her hair was the most beautiful hair I've ever seen. It comes down to her waist, and it's just ringlet. It's beautiful. Never had color, nothing on it. And I said, how long have you been dressing like this and covered up like this? She's 42, and since she was 27. So the experiences we've had to endure in our life is what makes us. We have to overcome those. And I think that we give hope. We give love. Yesterday, during the pool party, I looked around, I was burning up. And there were like 10 women just sitting around, just wanting to talk to me. And I'm thinking, you could be in that pool. What do you want me to, you know? But I want you to say to people that may hear this, why do they need to come see the center? Why do they need to help us?
Well, and actually kind of picking up with what you were talking about there, that's what we passionately know we need to do for these women, because what has been spoken over them for so much of their life is how they now define themselves, and it's absolutely not true.
Let me just say one thing.
Yeah.
This woman this morning had to drive herself to the hospital because her dad was mad at her.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, well, oftentimes when I make a visit down to we have our adult education department downstairs. It's run by Connie Farrell, and she's told me I don't know how many times how for her it's so frustrating to have one of these women sit down across from her and say, well, I really can't do any of these things because I have a learning disability. And Connie's like, now wait a minute. And she'll ask you a few questions and it becomes clear this person has no learning disability. They've just been told that all their lives. And so once she shows them what they're capable of doing, it changes everything. Well, that's true with all of this. Like you're explaining this young lady and everybody else, we've got to be able to get them to see themselves as God sees them. And the other thing is, you and I could sit here for the next 6 hours and talk about the center, and people still wouldn't understand it. It's just so large with so many moving pieces. And then the number one thing, of course, is when you enter the doors of the building, you feel something. People describe it sometimes as the Holy Spirit. They describe it as God's presence. Some people say, I don't know what I felt, I just know I felt something. So I would say to anyone who has not had the opportunity or thinks they would like to, come see us at the center. We'd love to give tours. We love to have people visit with us around the center. Come see what God's doing, the miracles that go on every day, and you will not be the same. You will be changed with a visit to the center.
Certainly changed you and I, hasn't it?
It has, 100%.
I got so much more I'd love for you to tell them about the dental department, the legal department, and everything else, and now we're out of time.
Well, it's been great
and just
fun.
getting going. But thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.